Imagine you were creating the perfect world. No death, no pain, no disease, no suffering, no violence. A world of complete beauty, complete peace, complete harmony. Now imagine you had the power to make it last forever, to protect it from everything that could corrupt it, everything that could destroy it, everything that could break it apart. You have that power. And then you place the one thing capable of destroying all of it, right in the middle. That is exactly what God did, and for thousands of years, believers and skeptics alike have asked the same question: why? Most people think they know the story of Eden, a garden, a forbidden fruit, a serpent, a fall. But very few have stopped to ask the question that changes everything. Not what happened in Eden, but why the tree was there at all. By the end of this documentary, you will understand why the tree of knowledge was never the real problem. You will see that what God placed in the middle of Eden was not a trap, not a test designed for failure, but something far more profound than most people have ever been told. This is not a sermon. This is an investigation. And it begins not with a tree, but with what the garden actually was. Adam had never buried anyone. Eve had never seen a tear. No child had ever died. No flower had ever withered. No animal had ever known fear. The world they inhabited was not simply beautiful, it was complete, untouched by loss, untouched by grief, untouched by the weight of anything broken. But that was not the most extraordinary thing about Eden. The most extraordinary thing was not what it contained, it was what happened there. Genesis describes something that no other moment in Scripture quite replicates: God walking in the garden, in the cool of the day, with the people He had made, not directing them from a distance, not governing them through laws and commandments, walking with them, present, close, personal. Adam and Eve did not need to seek God. He was already there, which means Eden was never primarily about beauty or comfort or the absence of pain. It was about presence, a communion between the Creator and His creation that was immediate, unbroken, and completely without fear. Not simply a perfect place, a perfect relationship. And that changes everything about what the tree was placed there to do. In a world of complete communion, God gave one instruction. One. Every tree in the garden was available, every fruit, every pleasure, every gift, except one. You must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now consider what God could have done instead. He could have hidden the tree, placed it beyond their reach, surrounded it with something impassable, removed it from the garden entirely. He had the power to do all of those things. Instead, He planted it where they would walk past it every day, in the middle of the garden, visible, accessible, present. And then He gave one command concerning it, which raises the question the story has always been waiting for. Why? Why place it there at all? Why not simply protect what He had built? The answer begins with something the text shows and something the whole of Scripture helps us understand. Without the possibility of saying no, obedience means nothing. Think about that carefully. If Adam and Eve had no choice but to remain in communion with God, their presence with Him would carry no more meaning than a river flowing downhill. It would simply be the only direction available. But God did not want rivers. He wanted a relationship. And a relationship requires the freedom to walk away. The command was not a restriction placed on top of a perfect world. It was the condition that made the relationship real. Without it, there was no trust, no choice, no love in any meaningful sense, only existence. But then comes the question the previous answer immediately creates. If God understood all of this, if He knew that freedom made the relationship real, Why allow the serpent into the garden at all? Why permit the one voice that would use that freedom against everything God had built? The answer is both simpler and more unsettling than most people expect. The serpent did not bring evil into Eden. He revealed what freedom already made possible: the capacity to distrust God, to believe that his boundaries were not protection but limitation, was already present the moment Adam and Eve were given a choice. The serpent did not create that capacity. He simply spoke to it, and what he said was not new. That same whisper, the suggestion that God was withholding something, that his boundaries concealed something better, that a created being could reach beyond the limits the Creator had set, had already been spoken once before, in a realm far older than any garden, by a voice that had once stood at the very throne of God. The lie did not begin in Eden, it arrived there. The serpent does not begin with a command. He begins with a question. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden? It is a small question, almost innocent. But look at what it does beneath the surface. It takes the one boundary God had given and frames it as something worth examining, something that might not mean what it appeared to mean. Eve corrects him. Only one tree is forbidden, she says. And then the serpent delivers the words that would fracture everything. You will not certainly die. God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God. He is not selling a fruit. He is selling an idea. And the moment that idea entered her mind, something changed. For the first time, Eve looked at God through the eyes of suspicion, not with the open trust that had defined every morning in the garden, but with a new and quiet question forming behind her eyes. Is he keeping something from me? That moment, that single interior shift, was the real fall. Not the hand reaching for the fruit, the heart turning from trust to doubt. Because the fruit was never the point. The question the serpent planted was the point. And it is worth noting, the text shows us this moment. But the full weight of what it means, the way one moment of distrust can fracture an entire relationship, is something the whole of human history has been confirming ever since. Now step back and look at the full picture. The garden, the relationship, the command, the serpent, the lie, the fall, and ask the original question again. Why did God put the tree there? Because without it, what God and humanity shared in Eden would not have been love. It would have been architecture, a perfectly designed system where every component functioned exactly as it was built to function. Beautiful, ordered, inevitable, and completely without meaning. A paradise without the possibility of choice would not have been paradise. It would have been a perfectly beautiful prison. The tree was not the flaw in the design of Eden. The tree was the proof that the design was real. Every morning that Adam and Eve walked past that tree and chose the presence of God was a morning that their relationship meant something. Every day they remained was a day they had chosen to remain. Not because they had no other option, but because God, in His wisdom and in what Scripture consistently reveals as His desire for genuine relationship rather than simple obedience, had made another option possible. The tree was not placed in Eden to destroy paradise. It was placed there to make paradise worth having. But the question did not end in the garden. Every covenant God made after Eden, every sacrifice, every altar, every prophet sent to a wandering people, every promise written across centuries of Scripture, was God answering the question first asked beneath one tree. Will humanity trust Him? And then, at the center of history, a second garden, Gethsemane, where another man knelt in the darkness and faced the same weight Adam had faced. not a tree bearing fruit, but a cup. And unlike the first garden, this time the answer was different. Not my will, but yours. The whole of Scripture moves toward that moment. One question, one answer, given freely. The garden is gone, but the question the tree represented is asked every day in every human life. Every temptation carries the same architecture as the one in Eden. The suggestion that God's boundaries are not protection, but limitation. That what He has withheld is better than what He has given. That you can reach beyond what you have been given and find something He was keeping from you. Every time you hear that suggestion, you are standing at the tree, not in a garden, but in the middle of your own life, facing the same question Adam and Eve faced. Will you trust God or take what He has not given? The tree was not a moment in ancient history. It is the permanent condition of what it means to be human and free. We began with a question. Why would a good God place the one thing capable of destroying paradise right in the middle of it? Now you know the answer. Because without it, there was no paradise worth the name, only a cage with beautiful walls. The tree was never placed in Eden to test humanity. It was placed there because love without freedom is impossible. And a God who wanted love chose to risk everything, including rejection. That is what the tree reveals. Not a God who set a trap, not a God who designed failure, but a God who understood that the only love worth having is the love that is freely given. And so He planted a tree, and He waited to be chosen.